A guy walks up to his own front door with a duck under his arm. His wife rips open the front door and says, "Where the hell have you been?" The guy says, "This is the pig I was telling you about." And the wife says, "That's not a pig." And the guy says, "I was talking to the duck." Have you ever tried to concentrate and been unsuccessful? Have you ever tried to act without acting? If so, this could be the episode for you. This is Pop Culture Fridays. I'm your host, Troy. I've been reading this book by Alan Watts called Become What You Are. Let's get straight into it because he talks about the way, looking for it, whatever it is. How do you find it? How does anybody find it? Well, he might have a suggestion. Now, I believe that almost all human beings make some sort of a distinction between the self that wills and acts, and the subconscious self that manages our hearts and glands and nerves. Such words as self-control and self-consciousness suggest this division of our being into two parts, knower and known, thinker and thoughts. To the degree that we feel this division, we are always trying to control and understand and dominate our subconscious self with our conscious and willful self. But this is quite literally to be all balled up, to be in a desperate and utterly frustrating condition of self-strangulation, falling over one's own feet, and perpetually getting in one's own way. This is why our principal problem in life is ourselves, why we are so tormented with anxiety about self-preservation and control, why we are so mixed up that we have to make laws to regulate our behavior, employ police to keep ourselves in order, and equip armies with explosives to prevent us from blowing ourselves up. In the more intimate sphere of personal life, the problem is the pain of trying to avoid suffering and the fear of trying not to be afraid. Obviously, anyone who realizes the enormity and absurdity of this predicament wants to get out of it, wants to get unballed up. But this is so much more easily done than said that it's a very difficult thing to do indeed. The way back or forward to harmony, in the profoundest and most radical sense, is to do nothing at all. But I said that this was much more easily done than said, because the moment we begin to talk or think about it, it becomes immensely difficult to understand, to clear from innumerable misinterpretations. In other words, you can't concentrate and try to concentrate at the same time, if you dig. That's like trying to bite one's own teeth, or trying to point an arrow at itself. Perhaps it's more like this: because they take themselves lightly, birds can fly. So we can't concentrate and try to concentrate at the same time. This is kind of something that I've always thought about. Like if you go through any wonderful, warm home in the Midwest, you see lots of people that have things written on called "Be Creative." Well, you can't try to be creative and actually be creative. That was your opportunity. That was your moment to do something creative, and instead you chose to write the phrase "be creative." Now, I'm not saying it's a terrible thing to do. I get the intention behind it, the meaning behind it, but you see what I'm saying. So in other words, what I think Watts is saying, and for the most part I think I agree with him, that the only way to find the way is to stop trying to find it. Let's take, for example, the great quarantine of 2020. By the way, this is quarantine day number 643, or that's what it feels like. So we're quarantined, and for those of us who are deemed non-essential workers, of course, hats off to the people who are essential and are out there putting their lives on the line for the rest of us. Couldn't be more grateful. But for the rest of us who are, for the most part, healthy and non-essential, we've had to do a lot of reflection. And it seems like first we go through the stage of fear, right? Then we go through the stage of boredom with either the routine or ourselves or whatever. And then we probably go through another cycle of trying to find something meaningful, trying to take advantage of time. I mean, after all, they say time is money. I would say time is more valuable than money. You can turn time into money, among other things, but the underlying structure there is time. You want time, and now you've got it. Now what are we doing with it? I understand that it's not the normal situation, because we're trying to avoid some great catastrophe here, something that's never happened before, obviously. So it's not the normal situation. But if it was the normal situation and you had all this time off and you were, let's say, getting unemployment, or let's just say that you were okay financially, how much reflection or introspection would you actually do? Would you meditate as much? Would you do as much yoga? Would you push yourself to the brink of insanity being alone? Probably not. Is this a good thing? I mean, I think one of the great things to come out of this particular virus, or this whole situation, is that, I mean, there are many bad things, of course, but this virus, it's not just about what it's doing to people physically, it's that it's sort of bouncing around in human society and highlighting all of our flaws and all of our shortcomings and all the things that we weren't doing as well as we should have. It's making us appreciate the things that we weren't appreciating. It's like we've all been made to think by our doctor that we have potentially cancer of the highest level that you can't fix with surgery, and we're sitting at home waiting for a test, and this is terrible. And at some point we're going to get that call and go, it's negative, buddy, get out there and live. That's going to happen. What are we going to do when that happens? Well, first is going to be a great celebration, probably, if that happens. And secondly, what are we going to do after that moment? Are we going to try to make some changes? Are we going to go back to the way things were? Doesn't seem like a very smart idea. Is there a need for everyone to be flying as much? I mean, there's an appreciation for walking. I've seen more people walk here in Michigan just on a daily basis than I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's a good thing. There are good things that come from bad things, I think. Politicians say never let a good crisis go to waste, which is why they're scumbags. But I think the same applies here. We could find lots of things to come out of this situation that are going to make ourselves better. And if we tend to our own garden, maybe the community garden or the collective garden will be better as well. My point is that, do we consciously try to craft this better way, whether it starts right now in quarantine or whether we look forward to the next step when we're out of it? Or do we just let it happen, as Watts is saying? Is that what he's saying? Is he saying that we're just supposed to let it happen? I feel like if we let it happen, that what will happen is the same thing that happened before. All of a sudden Pepsi Cola will start popping up everywhere, and there'll be McDonald's on every corner, because somebody else isn't just letting it happen, they're going after it. That's not to say that people with beautiful little independent bookstores and beautiful little independent bakeries and cupcake places, mwah, we love you, but they're making it happen too. Is that what he means? I'm not entirely sure how to take this approach, that we're just supposed to let it be. I love the idea of just being and not doing. I think that's probably one of the things that a lot of people have been thinking about in the last month since this all started, about an appreciation for all the little things that we took for granted, maybe, or at least found ourselves occasionally taking for granted. But what's the balance between letting things happen and making things happen? I like to make things happen, and I'll tell you why. Because if you don't make things happen, then things happen to you. That could be a good thing if you're a Kramer and fall ass backwards into money, but I don't know that it's a good enough formula to just sit back and wait for things to happen. I think you have to go out and make things happen. Or is Alan Watts just saying that making things happen or working on your projects or whatever it is that you want to do that, but then don't worry about what's happening in terms of like prestige or notoriety or getting some sort of some sort of achievements or gain outside of the aims of your project in terms of the content or the aesthetics or whatever it is. But I don't know how that's going to happen if you don't consciously try to make that happen. But again, we're talking about two different things, I think. We're talking about how we function in the real world or reality, and then maybe there are two things, and then the other thing might be just being ourselves, which sounds very comforting, but I don't know how long that's going to hold up. Or I don't know if it would work. It could work. He goes on later in this book to say that there's basically no way. It's a little bit of seems like a pessimistic thing at first, by saying that basically once you're born you start falling into oblivion. So to try to make anything else make sense other than that is like a waste of time. But that even though that sounds pessimistic, what you end up finding is that on the other side of great despair is like the best creativity and comfort that you could possibly imagine, that it's just waiting around the corner. That once you accept this idea that there is no path, that there is no way, that you just have to let things be and accept doing nothing, that you become the sage in that moment. That's when you find some sort of enlightenment. Could be, may not be. I don't know. As for me, I think I'm just going to keep trying to find a balance and keep watching tons of movies and keep trying to survive in this quarantine, because I'm a survivor, baby. And so are you, and that's why you watch this show. So, Alan Watts, Become What You Are. You can find it online. Might be a good read, 160 pages. I like it. It's one of those things where you it's not like you're going to breeze through it like a Kurt Vonnegut novel or a J.K. Rowling book. It's just like, it's one of those things where you might read a sentence and think about it for 3 days. So it might take a little bit of time. So I wouldn't say it's like a textbook, but it's great. It's a great read. Remember, you can follow everywhere at Pop Culture Fridays on Instagram, Culture Fridays on Twitter, ArtHouse43.com. We also have a Patreon, which you can find below. I hope you're doing well, friends. Don't worry, just hold my hand. We'll get through this together. I'm glad that we've connected in some way here by watching this video. And I wish you all the best. Send me a little thing. I love to get notes and messages and emails, or send me a video. Whatever you want to do. It's great. I mean, seriously, what else you got to do?